is Memoirs of a Renaissance Man. My name is David Ahearn. Memoir number 20. Confessions of a Parrot Head. I'd rather die while I'm living than live while I'm dead. I have a secret. I really don't reveal it to anyone, and in fact, it took me a number of years to admit it to Audie until I finally realized I couldn't keep it from her anymore. I'm a parrot head. Yes, it's true. It runs through my blood, and as much as I hate to admit it, no matter how long I may go on the wagon without listening, when I rediscover Jimmy Buffett, I can't go long without my fix. I can't stop listening to his poetically lyrical verses that are joined with calypso melodies in a marriage that are nothing short of toe-tapping. For a long time, I was ashamed to admit this. I didn't even tell my closest friends. For those unfamiliar, a parrot head is a fan of Jimmy Buffett, his music, and the beach lifestyle that has become the hallmark of his music and his career. The origin of the term parrot head dates back to June 28, 1985, when one of Jimmy Buffett's former Coral Reefer band members, Timothy B. Schmidt, gave birth to the phrase. Buffett and his Coral Reefer band were playing a concert held at the Timberwolf Amphitheater in Cincinnati, Ohio, and as Jimmy looked out over the vast crowd, he couldn't help but notice that an overwhelming number of concertgoers were wearing tropical clothing and parrots on their head. On a whim, Schmidt called them parrot heads, and the name stuck. From that day forward, rabid fans became proud to call themselves parrot heads. I certainly never intended to join this rather strange group of radical fans. Early on, it wasn't considered cool to label oneself a parrot head. That is, until cool became kitschy, in a kitschy kind of way. I didn't know that this ragtag group existed when I first discovered Buffett's music around 1986. It would be years later that I would learn that Jimmy's fans were called parrot heads, and their backgrounds ranged from attorneys to dentists, or just island dwellers who long ago dropped out of the rat race. When I was introduced to the music, I was a young high school boy living in Iowa with dreams of one day leaving my small town to embark on a career in comedy. When friends introduced me to Buffett and his music, I was instantly struck by his themes of following an unconventional life path and living out one's wildest dreams. I had dreams as a young kid living in Iowa, dreams most people in a small community didn't really understand. While many of my friends were either debating which college they would attend or how they would possibly become a foreman one day at the local factory, I dreamed of becoming a stand-up comedian. I didn't really fit in, and therefore I kept my aspirations to myself. Jimmy Buffett became the soundtrack to those very dreams. My parents' home in Iowa was about a mile walk from a beautiful city park called Eagle Point Park in the northern part of town. It overlooked the widest point of the Mississippi, and on many an evening I would walk to the park with Jimmy Buffett playing in my headphones as my dreams of creating a comedy career and one day living on the beach percolated in my head. I walked alone. I dreamt alone. By design, no one knew my plans because I knew no one would understand my dreams. Jimmy Buffett understood. Jimmy Buffett encouraged me to forget what everyone else thought and just say, go for it. What do you have to lose? At least I told myself he did, and that was enough to keep the fire ignited in my belly to keep me moving forward one step at a time. Songs like He Went to Paris, Banana Republic, and A Pirate Looks at 40 gave me permission to dream. They became anthems for me to remain laser-focused on my dreams. They inspired me to never become deterred or give up on living the life I wanted to live. This is the tableau of Jimmy's music. He sings anthems of iconoclasm and measured rebellion. He covertly sings songs that encourage listeners to question everything we've been told and to follow our own hearts. He preached, I'd rather die while I'm living than live while I'm dead. These words resonated in my soul. Each time Jimmy sang about giving up the traditional life and living life by the sea, I made myself the promise, I will follow my dreams and one day I will live in a beach town. I was 16 at the time. It was a long way from becoming a reality. I was living in Iowa by the Mississippi, not quite a beach town, but near water nonetheless. I was aiming for island paradise. When I finally did leave Iowa, Jimmy Buffett moved into the background of my life. In the ensuing years, he was replaced with new heroes like Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, Hemingway, Picasso, and other Herculean personalities that inspired me to break the rules and live an authentic life. In my 20s, I dreamed of living in Paris while living out life like they did in the Roaring Twenties. Although Jimmy Buffett wasn't prominent in my life at this time, he quietly waited in the background, patiently knowing that one day I would return to hear him serenade me once again. When Audie and I came to Galveston, it felt right. It wasn't exactly the beach that I had pictured when I was a kid, but it was suitable. At the time, the picture looked more like Malibu or Hawaii. But as Audie and I drove around the island, Jimmy Buffett began stirring inside of me once again. Being by the ocean made me reminisce about my walks to Eagle Point Park. Those dreams never really died, and in fact, now 35 years later, with that experience under my belt, I look back on those dreams I had and realize they came true. They didn't exactly look like I thought they would back then. I dreamed of hosting The Tonight Show on national television, like one of my heroes, Johnny Carson. Instead, my dream looked differently. I got to host 4-Day Weekend for almost 23 years. I dreamed of finding my soulmate living by the beach in Malibu. I found my soulmate, and we landed, for the moment at least, in Galveston. Dreams are funny that way. They will materialize, however, oftentimes they look just a little different than we picture. This is how we two-step with the universe. We state our intentions, and then the universe co-creates with us. We have to be open to the universe's co-creation and not become too attached to our picture of how things are going to look. I never really became the star that I thought I would. Instead, I became something just a little bit different. I didn't become what I thought I wanted at age 16. However, what I didn't realize then that I understand now is that I never had to compromise my integrity or authenticity on my journey. I can't say that would have happened or been the case had I become a star that I longed to be as a young man. In hindsight, I'm quite certain I wouldn't have handled it well. The universe spared me what I thought I wanted and delivered me something else. Something close, just not an exact replica of my dreams. For that, I am thankful. The universe held my back in a strange way. It had my back in a strange way. My soul understood what I really needed, and I was guided perfectly on the journey, even when I didn't know I was being guided. Which brings me back to Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy was never the biggest star in the music industry most of his career. He did very well and had a long and loyal fan base. I share this with Jimmy. But there were much bigger music stars during his career. He never really quite fit in. The music industry didn't really know what to do with him, and so he just kept playing his music his way and remained authentically himself. He wrote and played from his soul and let the universe handle the other details. His authenticity is what drew his fans to him. His devil-may-care attitude is what created the legion of fans known as Parrot Heads. Last week, as Audie and I were driving around the island and admiring the ocean on our drive, I turned to her and said, "Did I ever tell you how much of a Jimmy Buffett fan I am and how much he inspired me?" "You told me a little bit." "He inspired me to leave Iowa and pursue my dreams. I am forever thankful to him for that, and he doesn't even know I exist." We drove in silence for a while and drank in the beachcombers setting up for their daily visit to the beach. Then, I did the only thing I knew to do. I pulled up my Spotify and typed in Jimmy Buffett in the search bar. Jimmy and I had been estranged for too long. It was time for us to reunite. I knew in my heart that I could no longer be embarrassed by my love of Buffett. It was time to own what has always been and resided deep in my soul. I was a Parrot Head. A proud one at that. As Jimmy's song came to life through the car speakers, the first strum of the guitar took me instantly back to Iowa. 35 years whizzed by, I thought, and I barely noticed because I was so busy trying to achieve. I was so busy trying to become a star that quite a lot of the time I simply just forgot to stop and look around and enjoy all that had happened. Jimmy's music transported me back to the past and to those former dreams that I held so closely in my heart when I was a young high school boy daydreaming of what could be. I now had the luxury of hindsight, as most of the puzzle of my life had been filled in. As Buffett's lyrics poured forth from the car speakers as Audie and I drove, I remembered looking out at the Mississippi 35 years ago and dreaming of this very day. I didn't know her then, but now she's become one of the most central pieces of my life's puzzle. Audie and I listened to Jimmy Buffett, and he provided the soundtrack for our drive. We got to roll with the punches, learn to play all of our hunches, making the best of whatever comes your way, forget that blind ambition, and learn to trust your intuition. Follow your heart. Follow your soul. It will never mislead you. We often think we want and what we want. It doesn't always serve our greatest evolution, and many times this glorious universe knows better and prevents things from manifesting into our lives that aren't going to serve us. At 16, I wanted to become famous at the expense of almost everything. The universe had other plans. The 51-year-old me knows that the 16-year-old didn't quite understand what he needed. Forget that blind ambition and learn to trust your intuition. My intuition brought me to Galveston with Audie. Although we don't exactly know where this is going to lead us, we have to trust. And when we trust, this is when the magic happens. We just have to trust and let Jimmy sing the lyrics that percolate in my mind. Life is a journey that's measured not in miles or years, but in experiences. And the route your life takes is built not of roads, but of songs. Sing on, pirates, sing on. You're inspiring the world with your music. For more, go to daviddanielbooks.com.